the webinar today where we are going to talk about mostly early warning. I do have Insights in RTI on the screen, but we are going to mostly cover early warning, and I'm just going to mention Insights in RTI. And I do have some other webinars planned throughout the month of October. So if you have not checked those out, check them out. I'm doing a couple of sessions on Insight, one as a beginner level and another one as an more advanced level. So if you've never done anything with Insights, I would say start with a beginner level, but feel free to sign up for those webinars. And RTI is a demonstration of the intervention system within Infinite Campus. I have been doing a lot of work recently with MTSS and Infinite Campus. And so this is actually going to talk about the intervention side and document the interventions. But today we're going to mostly cover and talk about early warning. So I thank you all for being here. The link that you have on the slide and also in the chat is going to take you to a website. And this is a website that I put together several months ago. And I'm going to go to that. Give me just a second. But I'm going to mostly be in the system working. So we will have the website up at the, I'll have the website up, but I'm going to mostly be in the system working. But this website, I actually designed this so that you could take the information from early warning and take it back to your districts or use it in your districts in your data teams and your school at your school leadership meetings, and you would be able to just go through this presentation to hopefully help everyone else understand early warning. I always like to talk about a little bit about data before we ever get into early warning, and so we are going to cover mostly. We're going to cover this, and then we're going to do just a quick look at some of the insights and the RTI. But we're going to talk about some data using, making some data informed decisions. But we're going to spend a lot of our time on what is early warning, how to understand the GRAD score, and then how to do it in Infinite Campus. Now, I will say this part, when you're working with Infinite Campus, this part is like one of the easiest things that you can do in Infinite Campus. The hard part with early warning is actually understanding what early warning is and how that data is compiled and how that you can use it. Okay, so without any, so we're going to start. If you want, if you're in the presentation, you can click Start Course, or you can go to a specific part of the presentation. I do like to talk a little bit about data. A lot of my background is working with data and building dashboards for various stakeholders. I actually love everything about data. And so as we're working with data, one of the main things that I want to point out on this first part here, some misconceptions about data, is number 4, technologies to support data are inadequate and don't allow a way to present data in a meaningful way. And I will say with our NCSIS that we have in North Carolina, I'm excited to tell you, if you haven't had a chance to play with any of this, I am excited to tell you that that is not the case with Infinite Campus, because with early warning, with insights, with some cube analysis, all of these tools are ways that you can make some good data-driven decisions and in a quick, real-time way, and building your own dashboards. So I always tell everyone the dashboards that I used to build are only as good as when I pull the data. But the thing about building your and looking at the data in Infinite Campus, it's all based on real time. So as we go on down, I also want to point to this one, because data equals test results. Data is so much more than just test results. Data is the whole child. And so when you're talking about qualitative and quantitative data, one thing that you're going to see with early warning today is early warning really looks at many different areas of our students to sort of arrive at some, and using some machine learning to help you understand some supports and some areas that you might need to put in place for your students. Again, data is not only for accountability purposes. Data is to help our students to succeed. And data-based interventions like a theory of action. We have a really good, in North Carolina, our MTSS department does a really good job of actually talking with you about the action that you put behind with the data that you pull from your systems or the data that you're looking at in your different data teams. All right, so now let's get into and let's talk a little bit more about this. Now, again, I'm showing this first part because I want you to understand that you can take this and you can use it in your data teams if you choose to. But one of the biggest things is, as we're looking at data, what is the difference between data and information? And I'm not going to go through the Padlet, but with the difference between data and information is that data, I consider it just raw facts. But the information is, how do you aggregate that? How do you put it all together to make something meaningful, to give a true data story of your students or what's happening within your school and within your district? So as we go on down, again, this is just things that you could use with this presentation if you decide to take it back. But I'm going to get into, I told you that I've done a lot of work with our MTSS person I'm from the Sandhills region. So I've done a lot of work with our MTSS regional support person around MTSS. And she asked me, she said, Lynn, will you please add this to the presentation? And it is so true, because we could learn all of this today, but unless you have good practices, you have good implementation of those practices, you have good processes and procedures in place, all the data may do is might help you identify sooner where you're lacking in some areas, but it's not going to fix that. So it takes all of it together. Now, let's talk about ECATS and early warning. If you used early warning in ECATS, early warning in ECATS is not the same as early warning in Infinite Campus. Okay? Early warning in ECATS uses what I call cut scores. So it basically looks at student scores and just gives you it basically says, these are how many students are performing in this area. These are how many students have were proficient on this test, not proficient on this. These are how many behavior incidents you have. These are how many absences that a student has. That is not what early warning in Infinite Campus is. What applies to what's similar to what ECATS is the actual Insights dashboard. And so in Infinite Campus, there's a tool that is called Insights, and it is closer to what you had in ECATS than what early warning is. Early warning is not, it does not deal with cut scores. Okay, so let's start now and let's talk a little bit about what is early warning. All right, well, I have been doing this for a while now, and I have learned that if you do not understand early warning, then you will not trust the data. You will not trust what it is telling you about the students. So you have to understand what early warning is. And early warning is very different than anything that we have had in education before, because in education, most of what we deal with are cut scores. These number of students were not proficient. These number of students scored a level 3. These number of students, we deal with cut scores that have a clear, this is what proficient is, this is how the student scored. Early warning is not that. Early warning is a true machine learning program that actually takes all the features of a student, and it determines, based on the machine learning code, it determines based on the features of the student, is that student going to progress to the next grade level. Now, when you're looking at early warning, if you have the rights to it in your system, and if you don't, I get asked this a lot, who should have rights to early warning? Early warning shows a lot of identifiable information of a student. So my suggestion has always been, of course, your district level people that are working with students, your school level administrators, your school level counselors, your school level social workers, and there's different areas that may only need pieces of early warning, but I do feel that any of your school level people that are involved in some of the looking at the data for the school, then they should have access to early warning. But definitely counselors, definitely social workers, because they are working with students that are at risk. And so if you have to check if you have early warning, you would go to student information, and we're not going to actually go into it yet. I just want you to know if you have it or not, but you're going to go to student information, and under your counseling section, under counseling, you're going to see a link that says early warning. Okay. All right. Now, in this presentation, any blue box that you see is a link out to an Infinite Campus document that will take you further into learning more about early warning. So you can always come back to this and say, hey, I don't remember what she said. If it's not in the presentation, click on the link in the blue box and it's going to take you to more information. Okay. Now, early warning is, again, I've mentioned it a couple of times, is a machine learning tool. And the best way that I can describe the machine learning tool is a lot of us shop on Amazon. Some of us, like me, shop too much on Amazon. And so when you're shopping on Amazon, if I only bought 3 things on Amazon, then Amazon would not learn my shopping patterns too well. But unfortunately, I shop on Amazon more than I should, and Amazon knows my shopping patterns really well. And so Amazon starts suggesting things that I might like and move some things up to the top. Well, that's similar to what machine learning does. What machine learning does is it takes all the features of a student. Now, when I say features, it may be their addresses, they're changing their addresses, how many assignments they've turned in, how many assignments they have not turned in. Those are all features of a student, and it takes those features, and based on the features of the student, it's going to say, is that student likely to promote to the next grade level? Okay, so now machine learning is a subset, and I actually added this in case you wanted to do a little bit more research on it, but it is a subset of AI. And what it does is it trains a model from all the data that is put into the system. So basically it just, and I put this in because it's later in the presentation, but I got asked this in the field quite a bit. Is the data anonymous? And yes, it is. Your student's data is anonymous going into the machine learning code. But the machine learning code, the model, is actually being built from the data from all of our students. Right. Now, it is a true statistical algorithm, and probably the closest thing that we have to this in education has been through our EVOS, because with EVOS, those students are actually giving based on their testing, they are giving it's run through a statistical analysis program, and it says whether they're likely to be successful or not be successful. That's probably the closest thing that we have seen that we can identify with in education. But that is only based off of their testing history. So what you're going to see with early warning is it's not looking just at a student's testing history. It's looking at a student's behavior, assessments. It's looking at their attendance. It's looking at all kinds of different data points. Now, some things that you need to keep in mind, I get asked this, what is going into the model? Well, it actually depends, because a machine learning model changes as features are put in, and the model determines, hey, these features are not a good indicator of whether the student's going to promote to the next grade level or not. So they drop those features off. But if you want to see some of the data points that are used in the model, I have a link here that says data points, and it actually gives you a list of many of the data points that are used in this model. But not only that, it also, for most of these, it will give you the location within the system, and it gives you the field that you can pull. Okay. Now, here's another thing, and this one caught me the other day. I was actually in a previous school year, early warning is only works in your current school year. So if I am here and I change to 24-25, early warning will not come up for me. Okay. Early warning is used with students in grades K through 12. So that means a kindergartner, as long as they have some data in the system, that kindergartner could possibly have what's called a grad score. It is a tool right driven, so you cannot you actually cannot have access to this unless you have the tool rights in Infinite Campus. And this is a one I want to hit on because I had this question not long ago. It was actually at the very end of summer, and someone was asking me, does a student's grad score stay the same during the summer? Well, no, it does not. Because remember, machine learning code is actually basing a student's grad score based off a comparison to other students. So as data is constantly going into the system, not only just in your PSU, but in all PSUs around the state, data is getting adjusted, so it's adjusting everybody's grad score. Another thing that's exciting about this, that it's in real time, is that let's suppose that a student turns in some assignments. They turn in 15 of their 20 missing assignments. Well, the grad score is going to update based off of things that are happening with that student and changing with that student. So it is constantly being updated. Just like the more data that goes into the system about me on Amazon shopping, the better they get at predicting whether that I am, or predicting my shopping patterns. Okay. It is a comparison of students to like students. Now we're on a webinar, so I can't really do this, but if I'm in person, I usually talk about how that when you have, let's say, a third grade student coming into your PSU, that third grade student has features. Well, it takes those features and it compares those features of that student to other third graders in your school, other third graders in your district, other third graders within the state, and other third graders nationally. So it is it's doing a comparison. And what it's saying is, based on the features of this third grader, are they likely to promote to the next grade level? Okay. Now, again, for a student to have a grad score, they have to have the data in the student information system. So I know I keep going back to Amazon, but if I only have 3 pieces, if I've only shopped on Amazon 3 times, that's not going to be a good predictor of my shopping habits. And so the more data that is in the system, the better that the model will learn from that data and give a better prediction. I will say that I was with a group just this week actually, and they were a phase 2, so they haven't been on Infinite Campus very long, but all the data that came over from PowerSchool, I mean, there were some pieces of that data that the grad score was either unknown or it didn't look accurate, but for the most part, these were principals, and I asked them, I said, are these students that you would have on your radar? And they said yes. So all the data that's in the system right now that even came over from PowerSchool for phase 2 could be used as a guide for you right now if you choose to. And then I already hit on this, is the student's privacy protected? Yes, it is. Okay. None of the data can be linked back to individual past students. So when I say past students, excuse me. When I say past students, what it's doing is it's learning from past students features, and if those past students promoted onto the next grade level and the student has the same features similar to those past students, then that means that there's a high possibility that that student is going to promote to the next grade level. Okay. Now, I spent a lot of time explaining explaining early warning, because again, it's so different in the way that we are used to looking at data that if you don't understand the why behind it, then you will not trust what you see. I am going to skip this video, but this is a good video that is just a good overall viewpoint of early warning, but I'm going to go to this one. This one is talking about understanding the grad score. Okay. Now remember, the grad score is a prediction, and that's all it is. It is a prediction. I always tell everyone when I'm out in the field training, there is no way I would ever tell a student, hey, your grad score is such and such. That's not what it's used for. It is used for us to help identify students faster, to possibly get some supports that we can put in place to support them through for their learning. All right, so graduation related analytic data. But again, it's a single number that summarizes a student's likelihood of graduation or promotion to the next grade level. So as we're looking, not going to read over all of that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the picture. And on this picture, this is a good viewpoint of what the grad score is. The grad score is a number that the machine learning code gives you from 50 to 150. The closer that a student is to 50, the higher risk that they are of not promoting to the next grade level. And the closer that a student is to 150, the less risk they are of not promoting. So basically, looking at their scores, the ones that you are more concerned about are the ones that are closer to 50 than 150. Now, in a grad score, the grad score is taking into account a student's attendance data, behavior data, stability data, curriculum data, but it's also taking into account a lot more than this. It's taking into account the historical, the current, not only just the static data, but it's also looking at dynamic data because it's looking at the changes in the data. So how many times has a student or a parent logged into a portal? How many times has a student moved, the changes in the data, and it's doing student comparisons. Now, I always tell everyone that it's sort of like you're getting 5 for the price of 1, because the grad score takes all of this into account. The grad score looks at everything, the whole child, everything about the student. But let's suppose that you are a social worker and a lot of your main focus is on attendance. So a social worker, you can come look at a student's attendance score, and it will help you identify students that are at high risk in their attendance. So basically what you're getting is you're getting the grad score, it looks at everything, but you can get an attendance score, a behavior score, a stability score, and a curriculum score. So you are getting basically 5 different machine learned models within this early warning system. So in attendance, and I'm hesitant to give some because this is not covering everything that goes into a student's attendance data, but some of the stuff it's looking at is tardies, absences, their attendance percentages. So think about attendance percentages, how often that changes. A student has missed a day of school today, then their attendance percentage changed. So that is a change in their data, and it's constantly taking that into account. Same thing with behavior. Behavior, you're going to see the number of incidents, the suspensions, the total incident count. Oh, I do want to go back and mention something about attendance for our phase 2 schools. Attendance, your historical data from attendance, the daily historical attendance data did not come over. So attendance, it is going to take a little while for that data to normalize. And again, what I mean by normalizing is for it to get enough data in the system for it to truly learn from that student's attendance patterns. All right, now when you get down to a stability, it's looking at things like their portal logins, it's looking at the address data. When we're out in the field training and we train data managers, and most of the time we will say, you never delete an address unless it was completely wrong address. They never lived there, but you never delete an address. You always indate that address and you add your new address, because what's happening in stability is you're getting a look at how many times that a student has moved. And so if a student has moved 3 times during the school year, could that affect their learning? Yes, it could. It could affect their learning. And so the system takes that into account because it's looking at that address data. It's also looking at the enrollment data. It's looking at how many times that student has been enrolled in different schools. Curriculum, it's looking at your failing grades, your missing grades, your missing assignments, the GPA. And by the way, I will tell you, GPA, is one of the biggest predictors, especially when you're dealing with high school students. It is the biggest, well, it's only for high school, but it is the biggest predictor of whether a student is going to progress to the next grade level. Because we know, going back to talking about the stability, if a student has moved 5 times and they have a GPA of 2.1, then those moves could have affected that GPA. But if a student's moved 5 times and they have a GPA of 3.9, more than likely probably hasn't affected their grad score. So GPA is a huge predictor of whether a student is going to promote to the next grade level. And then in curriculum, I get asked this a lot. Are the test scores, their EOGs, ELCs, all the test scores that you see on that assessment screen, are they feeding into the student's grad score? And my answer to that is not yet. We have several months ago, I reached out, and as I was doing some research into this, and I reached out to Infinite Campus, realized that our test scores don't have anything in the raw score field for our EOGs and EOCs. So I talked with Dr. Dietrich at DPI, and he's working with our accountability side so that eventually, hopefully, those test scores are going to be feeding into your curriculum score for your students. All right, now that was a lot to tell you. This is a really good video. This is in a webinar, video doesn't usually play that well, but I am going to take this video and go to the very end because I want to show you a picture. So fine. I want to get to a picture. Okay. All right. So what I want to show you. So in this picture, so let's suppose that you have a student and that student has 5 days absent. So we know students is 5 days absent. It is going to look and see what are other features of this student. And as it's going on up and it's taking a look at the different features of that student, it is taking those features and it is assigning from a high risk of them not promoting to the next grade level to a very low risk of them not promoting to the next grade level. So a student that has a 75, that means that they have, along the way, they have various risk factors that are affecting that score. So what early warning does is it helps you try to identify some of these risk factors that are causing them to have a low grad score and possibly put some supports in place. Here's the support that you see. So putting some supports in place that would actually help that student promote to the next grade level. And so as you're looking at this, this is an example of a student has 5 days absent. So with 5 days absent, what is the next feature that would contribute to whether that student is going to promote or not promote to the next grade level? And so these are called the student's risk factors. Okay. Now, again, this is their grad score, but again, you're also going to get a separate attendance, behavior, curriculum, and stability. So if attendance here, if this 5 days absence, if this student has a low grad score and we determine that it's the absences that student has, what supports can I put in place to help that student promote to the next grade level? Okay. Now that is a video that is so worth you going back and watching because it explains pretty much most of the things that I've said. It explains it in a video format. Okay. Now, as you're looking at this, now we're going to go into the system. So everything that I talk about in the system is going to be here on this tab where it says understanding the grad score. All right. So let's go take a look in the system. And I am in a training site. So this is all scrambled data. But I'm going to go to student information. And under student information, I'm going to click on early warning. Now, this top that you see is really just a graphical display of how the student's grad score is distributed in a graphical format. That's all it is. If you are at a district level, I can add more schools if I want to, or if you have rights to more than one calendar. So if you're an instructional coach and you have several schools that you support, you could add all of those schools if you needed to here. I can also do this by grade level. If I just wanted to look maybe at my eighth graders, I could just look at my eighth graders if I wanted to. And I'm actually going to change to to a high school. Okay. Now, when you're looking at this graph, if I want to see my graph for other scores, because remember 5 for the price of 1. So if I want to look at just attendance, then this graph will change based for my attendance. If I wanted to look again at just my curriculum, the graph would change for my curriculum. I'm going to keep it on grad score, and I'm going to talk about the features that are here in this area. All right, this graph, these cutoff areas are determined by you. So in other words, if I wanted to see the students that had in a high risk, I say the students that are that have a grad score of 80 and below, those are going to be my high risk students. And so this tells me that the students, I have 76 students that are in the 80th percentile, that are in the 4th percentile and below, and they have a max score of an 80 grad score. So I can adjust these based on maybe what I have staff to sort of look at, or I just on what scores I have determined that I want to use. So if I go on down to 70, and I'm going to look at grad scores that are from 50 to 70, then that takes me down to the 3 percentile of all my students, and there's 56 students in that. Right. Now I can adjust that for high, medium, and low if I choose to. All right. So this graph here is showing me that I have 56 students high risk, 344 medium risk, and 1,014 in the low risk. And again, those are based on the percentiles that I set or the max scores that I choose to set for their grad scores. Okay. Now that same thing works for attendance. Attendance, if I know that I only have the capabilities to work with the 80 percentile, a grad attendance score of 80 and below, I've got 16 students in that area in the high risk in attendance that I can target. So again, this is all based off of the area. The graph is based off the settings that I use. Now, when you get on down to the bottom, at the bottom, I can search for specific students. So now again, I would not show a student their early warning scores, but if you are counseling with a student or you're talking with a student, and I want to pull up, let's see, Carolyn Addison, and I want to talk with her, and I noticed that her behavior score is an area that she's struggling in, then I can pull up just one student at a time by doing a student search. Okay. You can also, if you have an ad hoc filter, if I have students, for example, that are in my caseload, or I am a counselor and I have a certain alphabet of students, then in my ad hoc filter, I could have a filter that I've created with all the students from with their last name A through F, and then I pull up that filter and I would only see my students. There is also a state published filters for your EL, your AIG, your 504 students, these state published filters. If I only want to look at those students, then I could actually do a filter and just pull up the grad scores for those students. Again, this is another place that I can look just for grade level. So if you're an AP and you have just a specific grade level, like your grade 9, I can just look at my 9th graders. Grad score, this is taking this high, medium, and low, what you said here. And if I click on high, it's going to show my students and it's going to sort them from the highest to the lowest. If I want to target just my medium students, then again, it's going to do my grad score of my medium students. And I can also choose 2 if I want to, high and medium, and it's only going to show me those students. Now I'm going to skip this for just a second, because right now I have all the students listed that are in the high risk of their grad score. So when I say high risk, I am going back to my picture, and that means that their grad score is closer to 50. So when you're looking at this, and I'm seeing the ones that are closer to 50, I can click watch all and notice that it says I'm about to watch 56 students. If you remember from where I set this, here's my 56 students. I'm going to watch 56 students. Now, why would you want to do that? Because when I come back in here, let's say 2 weeks, and I put some supports in place for those students, I can come back and I can go to early warning, and I can come down here to the bottom and I can click watch list, and it's going to show me my students on the watch list, and it's going to show me their grad scores. And should their grad score have changed? Yes, it should have if I put some supports in place, because remember, your grad score is constantly changing. And so based on what has been entered in not only your system, but systems across the state nationally. And so their grad score should be changing. Now I'm going to take the watch list off. If I want to, coming on down and looking at these, caseload. If you are doing the intervention side and you are documenting interventions in Infinite Campus, well, for you to document those interventions, those students are on your caseload. So if I click caseload, it is only going to, I don't have any, but it's only going to show the students that have been listed on my caseload. This part here, independent category outcome, this is going to show you your scores. So going back to this, there's a score here that is assigned to a student. This is going to show me my independent category outcome scores. If I wanted to, and I wanted to sort by students that are on their on the attendance, and I just want to sort from low to high, there is an invisible sort here. See how my hand is right beside, and I click once, and there is a sort beside that. To take it off or to sort from high to low, I click it again, and to take it off, you click it a second time. So I can sort by my individual categories. So if you are an administrator working with students that are having some struggles in behavior, then I would click here beside behavior. It is sorting that from low to high, and I can actually look at the students that I would like to target within my behavior. And you can put a secondary. So if I want to sort from my grad score from low to high, and then I want to do behavior, I can do that if I want to. Now, this is probably one of my favorites of this screen. It's called the category impact. What category impact does is it tells you that based on what's happening with this student, where could you put supports in place that would affect the grad score the most? So in other words, it's sort of giving you a viewpoint into this part here. It's saying if you put some supports in place in this area first, that would affect that student's grad score the most. So as I'm looking at this, I tell everyone to look at the number that is the furthest from zero. And so I'm an old math teacher, so we know zero is neither positive or negative. So we ignore that negative zero. But if I'm looking across here, for example, at this student, I know in their curriculum that is a negative 79. That's very far from zero. So I know that is probably the area that if I put in some supports in place for that student, then that would have the most impact on that student's grad score. Now, some questions that I've had on this. You have to really ignore the colors, especially the first 2 years that you are on Infinite Campus, while that all your curves and things are normalizing. But if I'm looking at one like this, if I notice this is the negative 16, negative 15, not much difference there. This one's yellow, this one's red. What I'm looking at though, I'm looking at the numbers. So some will get confused. I'm trying to see if I have any like that. I've had several that will get confused on the colors. For example, here's one. So this student, he has a -5, -5. One's yellow, one's green. Well, that's because in this category, it's doing a comparison. So in the curriculum side, it is -5, but based on everyone else that it's comparing it to, that's why it's yellow. So I usually tell everyone, just don't look at the colors, look at the actual numbers. And if you look at the number, if you put supports in place there, it's going to affect that student's grad score the most. Okay. I'm going to watch my time. I'm going to sort this from my high grad score to my low grad score. Now, as I'm looking at this, I can go in to a student by clicking on a student. Now, when you click on a student, the graph here is a really awesome graph, because what this graph will do is it will help you sort of track the grad score of that student over time. So if I have some phase 1 schools in this session today, if you change your grad score to 12 months, and of course in my training side, I only have 2 months of data, so it's not very good example. But if you change it to the last 12 months, what you're going to see is you're going to see these scores go up and down, up and down. And then what you can do is you can sort of look at where that student, or even what months and what year that student was having some issues, and sort of help you identify more, what could I do, what kind of supports could I put in place for that student. So this is awesome, because these lines correlate to the grad score that student has. I think I have an example of that in the presentation. Let me go down. I want to show you an example. Okay, here's an example. So in this example, I've got this on the last 12 months. Okay, so there's like 4 months of data. But as I'm noticing, that student's grad score started here and the student's grad score dropped. Well, as I'm looking at this, I can notice that their curriculum has pretty much stayed low, but it has dropped and dropped and dropped. So their curriculum, this graph tells me curriculum scores low, grad scores low. So curriculum is having a huge impact on that student's grad score. As I look over here on this side where it says opportunity for change, if I notice that when I'm looking at this student, I can see all of the different changes of this student, and I can see the categories that are the highest. As I'm going on down, another one I want you to see. Let's take a look at this one. Right? This student, I did the last 12 months. I noticed that between July and August, something in that student's behavior score changed. Okay, and the behavior score went down. So it helps you to sort of start tracking which one of these are changing drastically on the graph, so that you know where that student, and even when that student some of their struggles may have started in their learning. All right, let's go on down and take a look. This is an individual student. So, and when we were here looking at the student, notice that this is the one that is the furthest from zero, that -79. So when I go into looking at an individual student, look at my graph over here where it says opportunity for change. If you look at the column that is the highest column, that is the place that if I put some supports in place for their curriculum, then that will affect that student's grad score the most. So if I go on down and I look at their curriculum, their GPA, they have earned, again, we're in a training site, but they have only earned 5 credits. They're not on track, and it will show, and again, I'm in a training site, but you're going to actually see their missing assignments. You're going to see their failing grades, their posted grades, and it's taking all of that into account for these students. I'm going to go back and see if I can find one. It's a little bit more data. Oh, there we go. All right. Here's a student. Here's a student that has only earned 2 credits. This student is a 10th grader, and so through their 9th grade year, they only earned 2 credits, and their GPA is 0.143. And so their curriculum score is a 52. And if I go up here and I take a look, curriculum, definitely, that's where I need to put supports in place because that will affect that student's grad score the most. Now, these are two that you are going to have to take with a grain of salt because they need to normalize. Behavior and attendance are two that need to normalize over the 2 years. If you are phase one, then you have current year and last year's data. Behavior, you will have current and last year, but it still needs some more behavior data in the system. Stability, all the things that I showed you in the presentation, a student stability score, look, student logins, guardian logins, this speaks to engagement. This is engagement in their learning experience. Consecutive years in school, overall years in a district, your primary language. Now, this is one I like to point out because, again, you have to trust the data. When you see someone that's listed at an address of 125 years, they've lived there 125 years, they're pretty stable. However, the data that came over from PowerSchool into Infinite Campus, that starting address, they started it with 1901. And so it's not really affecting the model because that model is taken into account. It's a comparison model. So that means everybody in the state of North Carolina came over at 1901. So it is not affecting the model at all. What's going to start affecting this model is when you start looking at the changes in their total address locations. This is the one that's going to affect the model. So if that student has a 10 there, that's probably going to affect the model if those moves are affecting their grad score. So this is how you look at some of the individual areas. So let's say the student was having the curriculum. Now, if I had more data in this test site, this would also show me my missing assignments. And I would probably assume that the student's missing assignments or their failing grades are contributing to this lower curriculum score, then I can go put some supports in place in these two areas. And hopefully that will start getting the student on track. Okay. Let's go back up to this side. If you want to go look at students' grades, I can click here. I don't have to go navigate and find this student, go to student information grades. I can just click on grades and it will take me there. If I have administrators on this webinar, your concern is if I've got a student with a low grad score, is that student on someone's radar? And so if they are, they're going to show here. So what you would need to do is teach your staff, if these are students that you are working with and you are watching, add them to your watch list. So let's say that I am the social worker and I'm looking at attendance. Okay, so I'm going to sort this by my attendance. Sorry, category impact. I'm going to sort it by my low to high attendance scores. Well, I got these students that I'm putting on my watch list. And as an administrator, you can come in when you look at these students that have low attendance scores and you click on them, it's going to actually show whether those students are being watched by someone else. Now, it won't show it for me because I'm the one that actually put them on my watch list, but you will see your social workers that these students are on their watch list. Now, I can, if I want to, view this as a PDF, and the PDF will give the information that you're seeing on this screen in a PDF format. Just be careful that you're not violating FERPA, and again, that you're not sharing the grad score with someone that should not have the grad score. One thing that I missed on this screen as I was showing it is also there is a button here that says show category impact. And show category impact, as you notice on this student, because they have a very low curriculum score, the largest circle is the one that is impacting that student's grad score the most at that moment in time. So I'm going to change this to the last 30 days. All right, so the last 30 days, this moment in time, I can actually see the largest circle here is definitely the curriculum. So from 10-13 on, something is happening with that student. With their curriculum, it's getting even a whole lot worse than it was. So this is a way that you can actually track and see what is having those impact on a student's grad score at the time. Now, what you're seeing here from me for the last 30 days, The ones that are in phase 1, your last 12 months is going to give you a really good picture of that student's grad score over time. So you're comparing attendance over time, behavior over time, and so forth, which gives you a really good picture of that student's data story. That's what you're looking at, their data story. Right? Now, all of these results can be exported. Actually, I'm gonna keep those on my watch list. All these results can be exported to Excel. So if you are doing in your your data sessions, you can use this as one of your data points if you want, if you choose to. So you can export it, and it will give you your list of your students. All right. Last thing that I want to cover in early warning, because all of these features, these data features within Infinite Campus are interconnected. If I put someone on my watch list and these students are on my watch list, I can actually come into Insights. And in Insights, I want to look at my absenteeism tier. And in my absenteeism tier, this is going to automatically sort it by my early warning scores. But I could also click students, and I want to see all the students, only the students that are on my watch list. And of course, none of those are on the watch list. I don't have any attendance in this test data, but I can click on watch list, and watch list is going to only show me the data for my students that are on that watch list. But more. I'm not positive in this training site that I have very much attendance data. And then, so that's how those interconnect. You can also, and one of the things I'm working on for the webinar later this afternoon is that in your ad hocs, and we start looking at assessment data, you can actually take their grad score, attendance, behavior, curriculum, stability scores, and put it side by side with their testing data, and in their and see again the whole data story of that student. So to summarize this, early warning is not difficult to actually use the tool. The hard part of early warning is understanding what you're looking at. That is the hard part of early warning. Understanding how they're actually arriving at that grad score, how they're actually doing the machine learning. That is the harder part. And if you spend some time understanding that, then you'll definitely trust the data a lot more. And I believe that is it. But if you will go to the very last slide of this, we would love your feedback. So there is a link to the feedback for this webinar. And if you can multitask, because I have 6 minutes, if you can multitask, I would like to show you just a picture of how your interventions can also show in the early warning system. So in the early warning system, there is the ability to show your intervention data. And if you click on end user RTI, if I come down to and I go through the pictures, and it's the third picture over. This is an example of a student that their interventions have been documented. And when you document those interventions and you pull that student up in early warning, there is a area in early warning that appears that's called interventions. And I can click and I can see the graph of the interventions that's being done with that student. So if notice for this student, curriculum is definitely the area that if they put some supports in place, well, your intervention is a support that you are putting in place for that student. And here is the data for that. So again, what I like about all the different data pieces in Infinite Campus, they're interconnected. And so you can use them in several different areas within Infinite Campus. And that's enough. And I am going to open it up if anyone has questions. And Karen are there any questions on the, or anyone on our team? Is there any questions on the question bank that I did not answer?
There are a
Just,
few, but I feel like we could answer them. I don't know if we have enough time,
okay,
and I believe that we have someone that has their hand raised.
okay.
Cassie, if you want to ask your question and unmute.
Yes, hi. So we were just a little confused in trying to figure out what all was. So you said that this is only available to view for the current year, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So our question is after the year ends and what determines the year end, are students reset to zero or how does that work? Because I mean, in Wake County or in not Wake County, but in North Carolina, we have year-round schools and other things. And so that, of course, is going to affect some of these trends as well, because like kids will be turning assignments, our kids won't be, or how does that work?
Right. Okay. So that's the beauty of a machine learning model, as it learns from the data. So the data, no matter where that data is coming from, as the data is constantly going into the system, then it's learning from the data that's going into the system, and it's doing a comparison of what your student compared to the data of all the past students. So it's looking at all the past students in the system and looking at their data and doing that comparison. So summer, it never starts back over at zero, because once a student has data in the system, then they could have an early warning score, because it's taking the features of that student and doing a comparison.
You just can't view like from one year to the next because it's like real time or
Right,
that,
exactly
that's what
right, because
we're
it's constantly real time, constantly, yes.
okay.
Because
All
think
right.
about it, if you viewed it from one year to the next, then you're looking at cut scores. And because this is what they were last year, is what, and I understand what you're doing. If you want to stop in time, then what you would need to do is go and export it to Excel. Because I
Okay.
can't export these.
So essentially at the end of the year, if we wanted to have every child's profile or the ones we were monitoring, we could export to Excel, see how it changes throughout the upcoming year.
Yes, you sure could.
Okay. Thank
You sure
you.
could. And I can see some value in doing that. Yes, you could do that.
Okay. All
Good
right. Thank
question.
you.
Anyone else? I have like 2 minutes. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. Yes.
I was gonna say, do you want to? I was gonna say if we have it, they can hop off, but I wanted to maybe say out loud one question so that maybe you
Okay.
could answer that one. They said are asking if the early warning scales that are preset need to be adjusted, or is this preset by a norm range of some kind based on all state data? So I thought that was important to mention.
So I'm not, okay, so if you answered that, go ahead and unmute and clarify just a little bit. I don't know if you're talking about these scales. Um,
Yes, those are the scales I'm referring to, like the ones that are already preset. Like where, why are they preset where they are? And so that can kind of help me with my MTSS team if we really need to adjust those just based off of our number of kids that are falling in each range, or if there was a rationale behind the original way that they were set.
this is based off of your data in your school. And let me give you an example of that, because I had a question, and it was a really good question from a principal one time, and I had to really dig deep to and really do some research on this. But they had in their curriculum, just looking at curriculum, they had their student scores started at 120 and went up to close to 150, but their 120 to 130 was red, and they were questioning that. And so when I started digging deeper and started looking at their data, they were an extremely high performing school. And so it is based off of the data that is in your system, as far as how it's doing the cutting and the coloring and stuff like that. I personally wish before, for the first 2 years, they would take the colors off, because I think it makes more sense to say when you're looking at closer to 50 or closer to 150. And by the way, this is a machine learned model. I've never seen a student at exactly 50, and I've never seen a student at exactly 150. So good question.
But when we adjust it for schools, so for example, I'm at the district level. So if I see it by all schools, if I go and adjust to an individual school, will those scales automatically adjust based off of that individual school?
It
Or
will.
okay.
If you change it to that school, yes, it will. That's a good question. Haven't had that question before. Okay, well, thank you so much. Again, if you will go to Eventbrite, there's several different webinars that I'm doing throughout this month. So I mentioned insights, I mentioned your assessment data, I mentioned RTI. So just go to Eventbrite and take a look because there's several sessions throughout the month of October. And y'all have a good weekend.